you so much for that. But you know, what comes to mind when you think of mental health specifically for artists?
So mental health is the first part of creativity. You cannot really have creation without mental health, without peace, and I completely agree, because this is a time where you're connected in a special place. It's a time where you're giving and bringing something that no one else is going to bring to the world. And if you take that time and treat it poorly, it's going to be very costly, and really comes from a place of peace, of self learning, self-knowledge, and self-care. Because when you are in self-care mode, you don't need to be running around. And I know all my colleagues here agree with me that if you're not healthy, it's that much you can do. It's like an airplane. You need to take care of yourself first before jumping and helping someone else. And the myth of I have to suffer to have a really awesome piece of art, that has been debatable lately, and it is really nice for all the people that are here today that you are giving yourself the opportunity to find different ways to take care of yourself. And I'm really happy that wherever people is here, that unfortunately we cannot see you today, we are taking care of each other and being very careful with each other too. So yes, I completely agree that art really comes from a place of peace. And that's, I think, one of the most beautiful words I ever heard for a while.
Yeah, I'm snapping on that. I'm snapping. So I'm trying to unmute all of our presenters. They've all introduced themselves. So if you all wouldn't mind just kind of jumping in. I know Paula brought up some things that we all, you know, kind of talked about. One of the things, Mishelle, that you mentioned, and Paula actually just talked about, you said debunking the myth of creating from pain. So if anybody wants to jump in, also everyone that's listening to the webinar, there's a spot here for questions or chat or something like that. So feel free if you want to submit a question or chat, because we're going to have time at the end. We're only at 6:30, so we probably won't go the full time till 8, but you know, we will be able to have time for questions and thorough answers. That was something that the panelists were really emphatic about. So but anyway, if you all want to jump on and just kind of talk about you know, and Mishelle, you talked about like debunking myths of creating from pain. So you want to expand on that a little bit, and everybody can jump in. Wait.
I think what I think about is if you think about just like the color wheel, the color spectrum, like pain and trauma. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. You were doing some mad hand signals and we didn't hear any audio, but it's good now. You're all set.
Oh no. Okay. Yeah, I just have with my hands. But one of the ways that I think about it is kind of the color spectrum. And so if you're creating or working in any way just from pain, just from trauma, it's going to make you really tuned in to certain colors that are really intense. But there's all of this other shade and nuance and contrast out there that you're not as tuned into. And I think people fear, if I open myself up to healing, then I lose access to this pain that's my magic. And I think the reality is that you just have more access to different things. The wisdom that you get from that pain, the intensity even that comes from that pain is still there. And I really think art creates so much healing. Part of the healing comes from being able to connect with other people who've experienced pain. But I think as creatives take really good care of themselves, they're able to offer something from a place of health and from a been in places stuck there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Your audio is a little lagged, but I got it. I definitely got it. Because when we talked before, you said, that we can, as your role as a psychologist is to, show people they can create from a place of healing, which is kind of what Paula alluded to about creating from a place of peace. And so we haven't heard from Miss Lane for a little while. So did you want to jump in about this a little bit?
So one thing that I can point out about creatives that I've noticed just in practice is it's often hard to pull away from being creative because so much of self-care has been surrounded with being creative. And so it can be really scary to think about utilizing other types of coping skills or even developing other coping skills because you've gotten so used to being in kind of one realm and being really good at that one thing. And for whatever reason, people think self-care has to be perfect. And so when we started to have this conversation about kind of the well-being of creatives, it's also teaching those skills outside of being creative, doing something that might not necessarily align with the things that you're good at. Maybe you do music and you try painting or vice versa, and just doing other things to express yourself so you can have that creative aspect of self-care without having this need for perfection that often comes when you're creative too. So just really paying attention to those things and doing what feels good. Like it doesn't have to be anything that's outlined. We don't have to have brunch with mimosas every Sunday to relax before Monday morning, right? Sometimes it's just about sitting in the bed and doing absolutely nothing and questioning if you've taken a shower for the day or not, right? And that's just something that we can do just to relax and take our time. And it's really easy when you're doing creative work to think, okay, well, this isn't hard manual labor, so I can just keep pushing and keep pushing, when really your mind deserves a break. Even if it's not hard on the body, it can be hard on your thought process because our brains do need a break. So
yeah. So Dr. Rodriguez, you're back on. Do you want to just talk about that a little bit, about that perfectionism? Because you brought that up. You're working with people in a high, what did you call it? High accomplishment? Oh, wait. There you go. Sorry. Dr. Rodriguez, are you there? Okay. Technical difficulties. You back? Oh, no. Well, Dr. Rodriguez, while we wait for your audio to kind of do its thing, Joel, do you want to jump in really quick?
Yeah, I mean, I love everything everyone's saying. This is my life, It's kind of like, and I don't ever want to create from like a place of real pain. I've been there, and it wasn't fun. And I like what I created, but I'm still left with having gone through that thing. You know what I'm saying? Or have had those feelings, and I rather just empathize and really just know about life, but not actually, punish myself or feel like I have to be, going through something to create beautiful bodies of work. I'd rather just create from beauty, from peace, from love, from the things I enjoy. And it's so true that as a creative, sometimes, especially one that relies on their creativity for a living, that's all I do is poetry related things. So like Mariner's Inn every Wednesday, the events I do, workshops like this or whatever it may be, this is how I make a living. And so, I got to be tip top, to even do these things. And it's just important that I still take time to actually take breaks or feel like I don't have to create all the time. I don't have to be checking events or be on social media, which can be really poisonous. You know what I'm saying? Me as an event promoter, I have to constantly be on Facebook, Instagram, whatever, constantly. And I'm bombarded with all the same stuff everybody else is seeing, but I'm on there a lot because I'm getting questions about my events. I have to engage people, I have to share flyers, I have to share links to be able to get ticket money and that sort of thing. And I really appreciate that the technology is there for me to get this done. But at the same time, we all know, we've all woken up first thing in the morning, go on to Facebook or whatever, and you see some negativity. It doesn't feel good, and it starts your day off in a weird way, And so I have to allow myself to be like, you know what, I'm gonna go out of town for a couple of days. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna sit up in a hotel room and be quiet. I'm gonna listen to music and just have some peace. I'm gonna sit by the ocean. You know, whatever it may be that gives me a sense of peace, I now find time to do that more, because there's a long time where I was just like, honestly, I mean, straight up depressive self-punishment mode, like just, oh, woe is me. You know what I'm saying? I had to get out of that. And it wasn't hot, it wasn't fly, it wasn't who I really was. You know, I felt more powerful. I feel powerful now, and I feel like I'm in myself, and I'm being like the person I've always, always been, but I'm actually being that person now because I'm giving up things, and I take time to love on myself more, which is so important. It's so crucial, so I love this conversation because, it reminds me to still do that. I say this now, but at the same time, I have to stay on it. It's a process and it's a daily thing.
Yeah, I really appreciate you talking about this, and I want to get into some of the things that we talked about on the phone about, the pressures of basically you're running a small business as a creative. And I think, Mishelle, you want to do a test, say hello, and make sure. Okay, hold on. I think I unmuted her. Hold on, or muted her. Oh, yeah. Oh, wait, hold on. Okay, you there? Okay, awesome.
Is it working?
Yes, it's working. Thank you. Thank you, Lord. So before you get into that, because I think this is going to be kind of a two-way conversation between you and Joel, and Paula too, and Thiera if you want to jump in, but about the perfectionism and then the pressure of the small business, right? Because, Joel, we talked about, you had to decide, do you want to do something that's for money or for, creativity? Ideally, you want it to be the same thing, but sometimes certain things are for, like they're the bread and butter type of events or projects. And other ones are like, I'm just gonna go and collect, bottle caps and make earrings for myself. You know what I'm saying? Like that, and that's actually dope. But do you sell all the earrings that you make, or do you just make a really dope pair of chandelier earrings? So anyway, Dr. Rodriguez, do you want to talk about perfectionism a little bit, and then everybody can kind of jump in on that small business pressure?
Yeah. So I want to just double check. I'm coming through, okay?
Yes.
Okay. So there's a couple different metaphors that I use a lot to talk about this. Sometimes I think about this idea, and I can send over an image that can be sent out later, of a tree that has its root system, and then like in the center kind of has its heart, its core, and in that heart and core is where we find like our vision, our values, our hope, our why we do what we do, and often like that's where we find our magic. But I think that depending on like the soil around us, we get a lot of messages about scarcity, about comparison, about who's doing what. Like social media is a huge one of those. Oof. And I think how we weather those affects a lot. And there's kind of there's two ways that I look at this. There's Dr. Myers out of Ohio State. She has a theory that I think speaks really well to people of color and specifically Black people. And one of the things that she talked about was like, what was it about a Western or Eurocentric worldview that allowed them to engage in genocide, slavery, all of these things? And one of the things that she came up with was a materialistic worldview, which basically just boils down to like what I can see, what I have, like that's where my power and my value comes from. And I think, well, let me contrast that. So she also asked the question, what allowed Black people, what about their African worldview allowed them to survive those things? And what she came up with was that it was a completely different value, that their sense of connectedness to each other, to culture, spiritual things, that worth and value and creativity and our magic is everybody has it, and so everybody is valuable, and we nurture and take care of each other, those things. And that worldview leaves us less given to perfectionism, less given to imposter syndrome. But most of us are embedded in systems where we have to make money. And I think that our anxiety goes up really looking at things just from the material perspective. And I think that's where we have to really think about where are we rooted? What are the messages that are feeding our soil? Who are the people that really see us and what matters to us? And are we kind of doing the self-care of connecting with them? Like even self-care, I really think it's a term that really, like, if self-care isn't embedded in collective care, it's usually not going to be enough. And so whatever you're doing creatively, to the degree that you're in a circle of support with people who really see you and know what matters most to you, and you can vibe off of them and get back that positive feedback and even the wisdom and discernment that you need from time to time, I think you feel less threatened by the things that happen, even though they're still scary. But I think we can engage in them in a different way. And one last thing I'll just say about this, Brene Brown has done a lot of work on like daring greatly, showing up fully, and what are the skills that are needed to do that. And she has this diagram that talks about, her metaphor is the arena. If you go to Netflix, you can watch The Call to Courage, and she's pretty entertaining. But it's this idea that whenever we want to do something, create something, be bold, show up fully, and we put our hand to the door of that arena, we often have a lot of fear. There's a lot of messages that get in our heads about whether we should do it or not do it, because that's still the time where we can like run in the other direction and not worry about what social media or family or friends or the art world thinks. And what she says is that if we go into this arena, we have to be really clear where we're looking, because depending on where you're looking, it's going to feed your perfectionism. It's going to feed your imposter syndrome. And so she basically says there's 4 places. There's the box seats, and that's where all of our racism and sexism and like all of those isms, the people who hold power and those messages, that's where they come from. And so sometimes even that drive to create work that's maybe more commercial or to get decentered from what matters most to us comes from there. The other place is the cheap seats, and that's more social media and just everybody who has an opinion with what they think you should do. And then the other place is the critic section, and usually those voices are more closer to home. Those are the things we've internalized. Those are the people who care about us, but still sometimes give us advice that's not particularly helpful. And she says those voices are usually shame, scarcity, and comparison. So when we hear them, we should know that those are like critics that really shut down our creativity and usually our well-being too. But the one thing that she says that we really should focus on is our support section, that we should really be focused on our self-compassion. So how are we talking to ourselves in a way that nourishes, loves, and coaches us in the direction we want to go? And then our empathy. So the few people that you really trust that know what you're about and where you're trying to go, if you're just looking at those few seats, your perfectionism is usually going to go down, your imposter syndrome is usually going to go down, and like your fight or flight, like all of that anxiety is going to go down. And so it's going to take like almost like that hamster wheel in our brain that really shuts down creativity and performance. It's going to quiet that and allow you to really tune into, again, kind of your heart, what matters to you, your vision, and then make the hard decisions, because we do all have to eat, but we don't have to be driven by that fear of, am I going to be able to eat? What are people going to think? How much is this going to sell? We can make it from a more grounded and rooted place.
You know, I just wish that this was in person, because I would go up there and put like my dollar at the altar. Like that was like, I'm like, dog. And you know, I think also just the taking away from what you said, it sounds like, you know, we need a squad, right? We need that old song in high school, everywhere we go we deep, you know, like, but you need deep roots and deep connections. Whoever wants to jump on, Paula, if you want to come back in too, or I'm just gonna let y'all chat it up, because I'm getting blessed.
I just love the metaphor of the tree, because actually any creative process is actually really demanding. I always think it's like giving birth. You are going through all these stages, and it is okay to go through all that stages. I mean, being creative means very deep knowledge in your own feelings. And it is okay to be angry one day and frustrated with your piece of work. And it is okay to be super happy the next day. And it is okay to say, you know what, Black, today I really don't want to do this. And I say it as a composer because sometimes I just want to, just go and do laundry when you are stuck or having a mental block, because it is okay. It's part of the process. And people get the misconception that you're going to have it perfect the first time. And actually, perfection came from so many hours of little by little hard work, or sometimes just understanding that whatever you do, it is okay for that moment. You don't have to be something specific. You don't have to be perfect or creative. Like, let me give you example in music. I have to do a time management because I have a daily job, right? So I decide I'm gonna sit today for an hour to just compose and do all the mistakes that I want to do, be like a child, right? Just do things. I book another hour to do orchestration, which is choosing which instruments I'm gonna be using in my piece. And that is mentally just a very rational exercise. People will think like it's not creative. No, it's creative because you're trying to choose what is the best, but it still is a rational exercise. Sometimes I have mental blocks and I just realize that I just need a nap. So it is okay to identify what do you need in that process, and also identify that everything is temporary. So sometimes when you have mental blocks, you're like, oh my God, I'm going to be here like for forever. Like, no, it is okay. And it is okay to be angry, or it is okay to be sad, or it is okay to just be. I mean, some days we really don't want to do nothing because we have so much pressure outside from everything, the news, the every day. I mean, your phone is ringing all day for whatever. So that's part of the process, and I love that you brought Brené Brown because I love her too. The self-empathy and the self-compassion is to say, you know what, today I'm gonna compose 15 minutes because I'm so tired. I have a long week. Life just throw at me so many curveballs like today, this coronavirus is just making a huge mess in every single corner of the world. So self-compassion, self-empathy, self-care is just simple little steps that everybody can do. And all human beings, we are getting through all this stage. And I just love the tree because the tree is that. You have your big center that you know who you are, you love what you are, but you have all these ramifications where you are, you are a mother, you're a sister, you're a best friend, you're a clinician, or you're a professional in whatever you're doing. And all this stuff actually feed your creative process. The most important part for me is always identify where I am in that moment. Like, oh, maybe I plan an hour to write music, but maybe my brain that day was like, you know what, I just want to edit my music because creative process is not working right now. And sometimes I'm planning something different. So it's always identifying what is the first need that you have in that moment, and be respectful with yourself. Imagine like you have a best friend and the friend come and tell you something, you listened, you pay attention to the need, and you're trying to do something to take care of that need. So basically you do the same process. And the perfection came after many trials. You see some people, the first time, like for example, clinicians, we have to train a lot to become really good clinicians. So it's the same. We just tried and tried and tried and tried until one day it looks so easy. And it's like, oh my God, I made it. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, try and try again, I think is definitely something that we do as creatives, that we do just, in work. I want to I want to kind of shift a little bit. We've brought it up a few times. I'm not sure what the makeup of the listeners are or who will be listening in the future, but it looks like, you know, majority of people on this call and stuff are people of color. And if we could talk about some of the other, you know, if you think about, like, everybody got, you know, they parables, you know, mine would be like a cake, you know, a layered cake. They have, you know, 1, 2 layers or even a trifle. Hold on one second. Yeah, come on in. So I'm still at the office, so they're cleaning the office. But yeah, you have all this cake and you have different layers and stuff. And I think people of color, and then you get into women, you know, we got sprinkles on there, chocolate chips and marshmallows and, you know, all different stuff. So if anybody wants to jump in about the you know, just how mental health, what that might look like for, you know, artists of color, you know, especially, you know, trying to navigate in traditionally maybe majority culture spaces. Anybody want to jump? I'm gonna mute myself.
I can hop in on this one real quick. Yeah, I mean, I listen. I'm a poet. You know, so I'm fighting I'm a black male poet. I didn't go to college, so I'm pretty much like a self-taught. Just been out here actually doing the work in the city for a long period of time. But at the same time, I still feel left out of certain spaces, you know, and people may have heard of me, you know, people in the poetry community here in the city. It's really segregated, you know. And I try to be intentional about welcoming everybody to my shows and being that kind of person. But at the same time, I think by default of the kind of events I do and the stuff I write about, I'm very much about, you know, stating that I'm a black male from Detroit. I care about these things, you know, and I think that a lot of times my voice doesn't really want to be heard, I think, you know, and I'm just being honest. I think that, I don't know. I don't get invited to a lot of things that I feel like it's interesting because I don't know. I don't want to sound egotistic.
Joe, you got hype. You done muted yourself. Wait. You know, you get hyped up and you push the buttons on the phone. He was hyped up. Joe, come back when you can. That was good.
It was a metaphor talking about his voice wanting to be heard.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny.
Hello?
That's funny. Joel, you got hyped up and muted yourself.
Did I? Oh, did I? I didn't.
Yeah, you was going and he was like, and then what happened was, and then the phone just cut out.
Whoops. But
No,
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I
sound egotistical as far as like being in these spaces and not being invited into certain ones. So that's where you left off at.
Yeah, it's just I feel like I know people that speak authentically for the voice of Detroiters, and you know, people like Jessica care more. I feel like I aim to do that as well in my work. You know what I'm saying? People that are intentional, like she's intentional about being a black woman. She's from Detroit. She's a mother, and she puts it down for how she feels. You know, and I think a lot of times when you do that, you alienate yourself from people that really don't really care about your experience. They just want to have a foothold in the city, but they don't really care about the experiences and the feelings of the people that have been here doing the work. It's just kind of like, oh, I'm here now. Here's my poetry thing. And if you don't have a grant, or if you're black and I don't know you, no matter what kind of love you get from the actual citizens of the city, it doesn't matter because I'm not going to invite you to my thing because you didn't go to the right school, you don't have the right color, skin, you know, you're not the right gender, or, you know, whatever it may be. And there's a lot of division. And it's tough. It's definitely tough. I'm thankful to have, you know, things the way I have it, where I have supporters, but at the same time, I feel like I'm constantly fighting that snobbery. I think, you know, it's just real. It's like a literary snobbery thing. And if you're white, there are readings and there are things that are just strictly catered to that. And they'll have a couple of black people come in, but usually these are the black people that are more acceptable. I'm just gonna keep it 100. You know, they're more acceptable to this thing. that maybe have done certain things a certain way, know the right people, got the right grants, schmooze with the right, organizations or whatever it may be, and they're allowed in. But I never really wanted to do that. I always made my own table, always did my own thing. And so I think, I don't know, that kind of puts me in a certain weird spot sometimes. But, it's Detroit, man. What are you going to do?
I want to jump in just really quick. Also for the creatives and for the well, actually Paul is both, so but for the counselors and for the creatives, this kind of thing kind of came up when you were talking, Joel, about that, and how do you deal with, because I'm sure Dr. Rodriguez, you experienced this a lot with your students. If you're one of the only, or you're like the first one, that kind of thing. Paul, if you want to jump into, but I'm gonna just start calling you Dr. Lane because I know you're on your way to Dr. Lane. So just like that pressure of having to represent, because then you can't even, like, you have this layer, like now you're an artist, now you're a small business owner, and also you have to represent all people ever that do whatever you do and look like you. So how I know this ties in with that perfectionism, but I asked all of you to kind of give 2 self-care tools, just some takeaways for people, and then we can start taking questions. I haven't seen any come through, but people are can feel free to unmute themselves or type them in. But I'm gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4. So Dr. Lane, Big Life, do you want to talk about 2 self-care things about people who are kind of in that predicament? They're creative, they're may or may not be a small business or self-made business person, and they have the added layer of kind of representing all people that ever look like them ever.
So I think the best self-care tip or skill that kind of falls into this category of having all these various pressures is to be really silent and get to know you, so much so that you cannot, like, you're unbothered at that point. So all these things are coming towards you, but you know exactly who you are. Because just because you are Black, that doesn't mean that you align with everything that people think Black people should align with. But you have to be okay with that and where you stand and know where you fit. And again, Joel, especially when you say, create your own table, it's all about creating our own table, because we're totally different beings, right? Everyone's not going to do the same things the same way. There are plenty of, creatives, and everybody's doing something differently. Even if you were trained or not trained, there are people who are trained who don't really do well. There are people who are not trained who do excellent, right? And so it's all about who you are and being solid in who you are and really taking the time to getting to know yourself, whether that's, going and spending time alone, or being, in spaces where you can connect with other people who share the same values that you do. But I think it's really important that no matter what type of self-care that you do, that you spend some type of time learning exactly who you are, to the tune of no one can tell you who you are at that point.
I love that.
Let me unmute myself. Okay, I'm snapping and everything.
All right, snap it up.
Okay. What do you call it, Joel? You say finger snaps, toe taps, hand claps?
Yeah, hand claps, finger snaps, toe taps, and that's old. That's old. I've been saying that for so many years. So
I know, but it sticks out. So I know, Paula, you brought this up in the context of being a woman, kind of navigating this really traditionally dominated male field as far as being a composer. So can I get 2 tips from you, or 1 or 2, whatever want to talk about as far as like self-care? Because I know you mentioned like people don't, they need to know what self-care works for them. So if you can share some things maybe that people can take away.
Yeah, I have like basically start with the basics, and the basics are always, sleep well, have your good diet, do some exercise, activities that are good for you, because if you don't have your body, regulated, your hormones as a woman or any human being mess up with you, and you're gonna be halfway. The second thing is very important that works for me a lot was time management. Make time for everything, even for have fun. I'm gonna have fun from this time to this time, and nobody's gonna buggy me, and that cell phone is going to be in the other corner of my house, right? Or like when I'm composing, I'm completely shutting down everything. Like I even inform my family, I'm in composing mode, don't buggy me, I don't exist in the next 2 hours. And it's literally, I ask my support network to support me in that way. So you need to communicate what you need because nobody else is gonna do it for you. The other thing is whatever you do that you identify that is good for you needs to be good for you. Sometimes we have really good best friends that come and give you the best advice ever, but if that doesn't work for you, don't do it. You know, like my friend tells me, eat ice cream. Yes, I'm lactose intolerant. So no, thank you. And one thing that I always do, especially in that moments when you have a lot of self-doubt, because self-doubt comes like a big truck to roll over you, is I just put a sticky note and I put something that is, remember always that you are unique. And no one is going to give to the world my music, or no one is going to give to the world whatever you are doing, because you are the only person that is going to do it that way. And if you put that really reminder in your cell phone or in your wallet or wherever you see it, it's important. And that has been like 4 basic little things that helps me a lot to be loyal to myself, especially in a world with, you know, being a woman and being in a certain shade of color, and being a composer in a very rational main academic world has been really instructional because teach me a lot to be loyal to myself, which is great. So that's basically what I've been using, and I just love to share it with you, and thank you for asking.
Yeah, thank you. Dr. Rodriguez, one of the things that Paula brought up was about creating a support system. So I'm going to give you 3 points, 2 of your own, and then how you create a support system again, if you could, you know.
So, okay, let's see. I'm going to try to be linear. Some of the things I'm saying are going to echo what she said too. I think for me, a big key, and this really goes back to that like center of the heart, and even what Dr. Lane was saying, I think you have to define your own success. I talk to people a lot when they're about to enter into different arenas or achievement spaces like the University of Michigan or wherever, and I say, like, if you give this space the power to tell you who you are, it's a setup, like it's already a wrap, because this space wasn't, like, you already have your magic, and this space is not really set up well to reflect it back to you. And so I think when you have these negative messages coming at you, you have to be able to acknowledge them, because sometimes we try to say, like, I shouldn't be affected by this, but these things soak into your soil too. And so being able to name them and acknowledge that they have an impact, because we're humans, you know, and then as Erica Badu would say, you know, we're sensitive. So it's like, it's soaks in, it has an impact. And so a lot of times, especially now with like Instagram and stuff like this, I have the like honor and privilege of being surrounded by a lot of really dope people, but they're not me, and I can get to chasing like what success looks like for them. Like Janelle knows, like on the scale of introvert to extrovert, I'm like an introvert. And so I've got to like, I sometimes have to remind myself, like, whatever impact I'm supposed to make in the world, it's going to have to be able to be quiet and slow, because I'm a mom, I'm doing other things, and I have to believe that that's enough. So defining your own success and then knowing your own magic. And one thing I tell people a lot is, like, don't compare your mess to other people's magic, because it'll have you feeling horrible about yourself. And, you know, don't get into second guessing your magic. Like, really know it. Know when you go to sleep at night, you know, 5 years from now, like, what does success look like for you? And really stay keyed in on that, like your North Star. And then you know, you've got to have your squad that reinforces it. And then, you know, you've got to have your squad that reinforces it. And then, you know, you've got to have your squad that reinforces it. And then, you know, you've got to have your squad that reinforces it. And then, you know, you've got to have your squad that reinforces it. And then, you know, you've got to have your squad that reinforces it. And then, you know, you've got to have your squad that reinforces it. And then, you know, you've got to have your squad that reinforces it. And then, you know, you've got to have your squad that reinforces it. And then, you know, you've got to have your squad that reinforces it. And then, you know, you've got to have your squad that reinforces it. And then, you know, you've got to have your squad that reinforces it. And then, you know, you've got to have your squad that reinforces it. And then, you know, you've got to have your squad that reinforces it. And then, you know, you've got to have your squad that reinforces it. And then, you know, you've got to have your squad that reinforces it. And then, I think there was an article written recently that was talking about how like the idea of Black excellence is kind of killing us, is working twice as hard. And I think sometimes we have to say the system or this environment may not always acknowledge me, but I can't use that as my metric. And I've got to have people around me that remind me what my metric is, what really matters to me, so that I'm not running around trying to show up or get the accolades that other people are getting. And I think I'll send over to you, Janelle, this thing that you can send out. I have a meditation that's kind of like looking at your snow globe, or looking at like what's in your pocketbook, and to see all of what you're carrying around. And then what I encourage people to do after that, there's a second meditation, is like forming your own support circle. So there are times in life where self-doubt or imposter syndrome is coming in for me, and I almost like shut out all of these other voices and noise and sit in this circle of people. And some of these people might be family, friends, mentors, heroes, ancestors. Like, they can all sit in my circle and really help me hold whatever it is I'm holding, and give me wisdom and support and encouragement that's may not be available to me right then. But in terms of the support network, I think it can look like a lot of different things. I know for myself, the internet, it's a blessing and a curse, because it does allow me to be in a lot of clinicians of color groups where I can get ideas, and it allows me to be like Black, even with like Black girl therapists. And so being in spaces with people who really do see your magic and reflect it back to you, even if they're online sometimes, if they're not available in person, can be huge. But also thinking about who are the people around me who I laugh with, who I can lay my head down in their lap and just let tears fall. And a lot of us are like constructing our villages wherever we can find them. And so sometimes you have to show up at some poetry events, or show up at some events for social concerns that matter to you, or like it's a little bit hard in this current moment of coronavirus, but when you can, you got to get out and make the connections, or even when it's not available right there, I think online can be a really great space to look for those things too.
Well, thank you so much for that. So Joel, she said showing up at poetry events. I'm gonna let you do a shameless plug for Saturday, and then I want to get your points too before I open it up for audience questions. So Cameron, get ready. I'm coming to you. So go ahead, Joel.
I feel like I don't even want to like plug it. I'm getting so much great information from everyone. I really appreciate this.
Go ahead, sorry. Let me
everything's so
I'm all
good.
hyped up. Let me.
Hello?
No, I'm sorry. I was saying I was so hyped up I had to mute myself because I was like,
It's all good. Yeah, but I'm loving this. But but I have an event this Saturday. It's called the All City Poetry Slam. It's the second annual one. So something I want to do every year for the city. Like I said, creating my own table. This is something that I want to do where we're showing appreciation to like Detroit's best poets. Because a lot of times I'll have slams where I have people from like Ohio or Pennsylvania, other places. They'll come and perform and compete as well. But this one's just off Detroit area poets, Washtenaw, Wayne, Oakland, Macomb County. So if you live in the area, you can come compete. Actually, slots are just about filled up, but we have 12 poets competing for $500. And then the top 3 scoring poets that make it to the last round get to move on to the finals, where they'll compete for $1,000. So it'll be a really good time. It'll be at Aretha's Jazz Cafe this Saturday from 8 to 11. And tickets are on sale now on brownpapertickets.com. You can just search All City Poetry Slam, or if you just put in All City Poetry Slam Detroit, Google it or whatever, it'll pop right up with the link and all that. So I'm really proud of that event. Hope you can come out. I know the coronavirus is real, so I definitely understand, if people can't make it. And then also we'll be live streaming it, by the way. So if you want to follow me on Instagram or Facebook, it'll be up. Joel Fluent Greene. You can just check that out. It'll be on that page.
I was just talking. Can you shout out your handle one more time?
Oh yeah, so it's Joel Fluent Greene. So you can do that. Joel Fluent Greene Presents is my business page on Facebook and Instagram. So I'll be streaming the event from there for anybody that has any concerns and doesn't want to get out. But yeah, it's gonna be a great time. So definitely encourage people. If you feel like getting out, you feel good about it, definitely come out and check it out this Saturday.
So your 2 tips, Joel, or 1 tip that you have about, self-care, something that either that works for your friends or for yourself, or that you just want to tell somebody else to try and report back, whatever.
Sure. Well, I mean, I'm loving everything everybody said. I think for me personally, I've taken more time to like maybe take solo trips. I can't always afford it, but when I can, it's nice to get away for like a day or two and just not be around, because we can't escape social media. Not if you're a promoter. It's like it's a helpful tool. It's something you need to use, and it's just what it is. This is the world right now. But at the same time, it's still nice to physically get away from maybe things, your space, your house, your work environment, your neighborhood, whatever it may be, and just take time to like, be in another community, eat at a new restaurant, be around people you've never been around before, and experience a culture unlike your own, whatever it may be. And I think that's just a healthy thing to do, especially if you're a writer, a composer, a creative of any kind. I think it's definitely helpful to pull away from yourself and to experience other things that bring you joy. And then also, man, just self-love. I mean, however you obtain that, I think that's just the best thing you can do, like knowing thyself. I keep hearing that theme popping up lately. And that's so real, because, the more you know yourself, the confidence you have to make your own spaces and not feel like an imposter or feel like you have to be a part of these things. You know what I'm saying? And that even helps your outlook on these things. You know, it helps you see that these people are just doing what they do. You're doing what you're doing. Your contributions are valuable. That's why I'm loving like this whole thing, because I have to remind myself of this. I sometimes fall back to the ego. It's easy to do that, where it's like, oh, I need to be doing it, I need to be doing that, da, da, da. But I don't have to be doing all this stuff. I can just do whatever I want to do, whatever makes me happy, whatever works. Or I could just do nothing, or I could do something. And I think just being easy on yourself as a creative is so important. And just taking time to just love on yourself. Yep.
Yeah, be easy for sure. So I got Cameron on here. I'm looking at, there's some people that have left or however, but Cam, if you can unmute yourself, because I want you to ask a question and just introduce yourself, because they don't know who you are. But if you can introduce yourself to whomever is still here on the webinar, and then if you have any questions or anything too.
Okay, can you all hear me?
Yep.
Okay, y'all. So yeah, like Janelle said, my name's Cameron. I'm a visual artist, videographer, graphic designer, the works. So kind of dabble in everything. And I'm trying to think of some questions. I was just really listening to what you all were saying. Like, I've been here since we started. It's all really, really helpful information. Like, I'm really feeling it. But maybe sometime I'm trying to think, like, I know a lot of like my like past works were, relationship oriented. So I think with my own personal work, I mean, this isn't me anymore, and the more I'm growing and the more work I make, the more I realize who I am and everything. But it's like at times, as a person, as a creative, whatever, how would you all suggest handling, I guess, not letting someone else dictate your happiness, if that makes any sense? I think like in my own personal life, a lot of times I feel like I have a pretty good grip on a lot of things because I'm the one in control. But when it comes to like, starting something with someone else, it's like you're almost putting that, you're splitting that control 50-50. And I just know with like me personally, it's like I've let that like dictate my happiness before in the past. I know that's really long, but that's the first thing that popped in my head.
Oh, that's a great question, Cam. It's something that I thought about too when we were doing the monkey trap, because I had my hand in there and I was like, there's all these people in my hand. They doing this to me. So, eventually I got, to reflect on myself. But I think that's a great question because, artists definitely, interact with other people. And we, like you said, Mishelle, we let things soak into our soil, which was just dope. So, but definitely I'll be quiet now so y'all can answer this question.
I'll start and just really quick, I'm gonna do like a brief thing on something that's a whole big topic unto itself. But I think boundaries are a big deal, and there's like external boundaries and internal boundaries. So I love this like quote on a meme that's going around for a while that says like a boundary is a place that allows me to love you and love myself too. And I think sometimes we give like a lot of psychological space to other people that's really our own. So whether it's like a personal relationship or a professional relationship, I think sometimes we have to figure out what we need, what's bothering us, what's working, what's not working, and find ways to communicate that to the other person. And sometimes in my office, I don't have one available within reach right now, but I have these like glitter balls. And I'll talk about how like in this other person's glitter ball is like their thoughts, their feelings, their wants, their needs, and they're responsible for those. And often before we even say something, we're already taking all of this responsibility for the other person. And so I think sometimes we have to come back to ourselves, figure out what we want, think, need, feel, and take responsibility for that first, and then figure out how to communicate that with the other person. And sometimes if they're not on board, then we have to set external boundaries like, okay, I can't keep having these conversations with you, or we can't keep working on these projects together, or whatever the boundary is. I can't, invest money in the things that you're doing because you don't come through, or you give me these last minute deadlines, whatever. Or it could be, again, it could be a personal relationship. But then I think there's also the internal boundaries of just deciding like, I'm not going to give this person as much emotional space. I'm not going to give their thoughts and their opinions as much weight as I used to, because they haven't really shown that they are pouring good things into my soil. So I think boundaries, which again is a huge topic, has so much to do with being able to be connected to other people and it work for both people.
Okay.
I'm gonna jump in because I went and got some chips. I'm sorry, I was getting hungry. So Dr. Lane, you want to take over? I'm sorry.
You, Lord. Well, I think also, just along with what Mishelle was saying too, boundaries are really important. And I always explain to my clients that boundaries are those policies and procedures of your life. And if people can't follow those procedures, you have to make some type of action to demonstrate and stay within your boundaries. So, especially when we're in relationships, we have a lot of expectations and we don't always verbalize those expectations. So just really being transparent and kind of asking yourself those questions, like, what does it mean to be happy for myself? Like, what does my happiness look like? Because we'll often, put in this whole la la land with someone else, right? We just really like this person. And so a lot of the things that they do become our happiness. But we have to remember and remain that the fact is we have to come whole. Like, no one completes you. You are two complete beings that come together. And when we have this idea that you have to complete this other person, that's where that unrealistic ideal of, someone becoming your happiness. Like, we say it all the time, like, oh, this person makes me so happy, or, this is my joy. And, that's very endearing. But the reality is that you have to be able to be happy within yourself. The same way that no one can make you angry, no one can make you happy. You have to choose to be happy. You choose to do these things. And once we start to own and take accountability of our own emotions and our feelings and really understand what they look like for us, I think it makes it a lot easier to be in those spaces where those things may become compromised. And if we have those moments where sometimes we do things that are a little bit outside of our boundary, but we have enough in our cup to give away, right? But we have to remain in those spaces for ourselves enough to have that overflow, so we don't end up in these spaces where people are able to drain us from things or take what we feel like is our happiness from us.
Woo, Lord.
Given that,
go ahead.
Hello. I just want to piggyback that one little thing about happiness is you need to take the decision. It's your decision, nobody else. And you have to be tenacious in the sense that you're going to have external pressures because some people don't want to agree with you. And the other thing, you're going to have internal pressure too, because you're going to feel maybe guiltiness or gonna have very intense emotions that they're gonna tell you, you know, make you feel the most horrible person in this world. But at the end, you really need to be honest with yourself. And if you find yourself being bitter and resentful, that's a good measure that you are not being loyal to yourself. And this is not about selfishness. This is about being healthy about your boundaries. So just be mindful about that. And it's a serious business to be happy because it's finally your decision.
Mm.
I'm just meditating, eating these better made chips.
Well, you got barbecue or plain? Which one's what you working with?
It was plain. It was whatever was left in the office. Somebody ate the little Purim cookies that we had left over. Anyway, sorry, Barb.
Good. I wanted to
Yes, please.
address what Cameron was saying. Also, you know, I know all about as a writer. I know all about writing from like inspiration when it comes to love, a past relationship, heartache, heartbreak. You know, dumb misunderstandings, all this other stuff. I know what it's like to throw yourself and your artistic self almost like at the feet of someone else. You know what I'm saying? Like they are the thing that's going to like motivate everything you do create, you know, with your creativity basically. And it took me really loving myself and really learning who I was. And I don't know, I mean, for lack of a better term, just like bossing up my personal life that got me out of this whole thing where I made someone else my everything. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, I don't know. It really took me just getting more confident and just more self-assertive about what I want to do out here and who I am and the boundaries. Like everyone was saying, those boundaries are so important. I didn't really put up any boundaries, and I didn't really understand the boundaries of who I was with. You know what I'm saying? So if you're not putting up boundaries, you're not respecting someone else's. It's just a huge mess. You feel me? And so I had to really learn a lot about myself, who I was, and that helped me kind of just say, okay, I can have a relationship, I can have an understanding with someone, but I don't have to make her my everything. Like her happiness is my happiness, her sadness is mine, her goals are mine. You know, her ideas. I had to get confirmation on my ideas. I remember like literally being in a relationship and like, you know, I thought of something. Oh, let me run this by her, and that seems nice. That's awesome. But at the same time, what stops me from just liking my own idea without having to have someone else's opinion on it? You know what I'm saying? And so it took a lot of self work to get out of that hole. I'm being inspired solely by this person. Where there's there's the universe, there's the work I do in the community, there's your own ideas and your own things that you work on. There's so many beautiful things that can inspire us and motivate us. And a lot of times we're just hopeless romantics. We throw so much into other people, but it really just takes work. Me personally, I just know it just took a lot of work. And I'm grateful for that work because it wasn't a great place to be. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we know what you're saying.
Good.
That was yep, that was awesome. I think too it can be applied because the interesting thing about being an artist as you grow, and it's just an interesting viewpoint that the world has on artists, that the industry, they don't look at it as the same as someone who is a doctor or someone who's a bus driver or whatever. It's still a profession that you're doing, and you still have basic needs, like you're creating a family from this. You may, whatever, you may have a dog or a cat or something like that, but you have these other regular life things happening to you, even as a creative. And that pressure sometimes will always be on, or kind of alluding to what you were saying, Joel, like this other person is dictating the flow of your creativity, which I'm sure can come up with parents as well. So I don't know if you guys want to talk about that part about and then we're probably, well, actually, if there's any other questions before, just jump in on a different topic. If anybody has any questions, it doesn't. Okay. So, but just curious about, seeing art and trying to challenge, I guess, even the general public to see art as an actual like for lack of a better word, real profession, to be honored. I think that is something that definitely can be challenging because I don't know, especially in like probably Detroit and other areas, there's a lot of like hookup culture. People want to get a hookup, don't want to. So anyway, if you all want to, just kind of jump in or talk about that, trying to get the respect, or should you try to get the respect as a professional person, as an artist? What do you all think about that?
I'll just chime in real quick. I know I started to get the respect once I really started to do the work consistently. You know what I'm saying? I think that it just kind of happens. So I think the best thing to do is not even really worry about that so much. Just kind of do the work. Like I said, I'm a poet. You know what I'm saying? And I didn't go to college, so I don't have a bunch of degrees to back up my poetry. I just have my words, my feelings, my experiences, my truth, and I put it out there. And it took, and I do a lot of events. I just did an event for Harmon International, and I do corporate events and things like that. But it took me really having to like take ownership of this thing and just do it and keep doing it and doing it and doing it. So I guess I would just advise anybody not to really worry about what others have to say. They'll say the right things if you're doing the right things. It'll happen. You just gotta plug away and keep at it.
That's really good. Thiera, you look like you about to bust. What you about to say?
Oh no, I think I'm just a firm believer in knowing your worth. Like, I think a lot of people get pressured into, oh, well, this is my friend or this is someone that I know who supported me, so I have to show love, right? Now, if you want to do that, that's your choice. But I think at the end of the day, you ultimately know your worth and the value of your art, and it's taken a part of you. It takes a lot of work, a lot of mental anguish. And I think sometimes we often will devalue some things because it comes easy to us. People aren't paying for how easy it is, they're paying for the value of our work. So it's kind of always been my aspect on things is, you know your value, you know your worth, and stick to it.
Paola, do you want to jump in before?
One thing that I learned and I hear many times as an advice too was be professional. Doesn't matter what is your product. Be professional means be on time, be accountable for your deadlines, pay your dues, do everything that any professional will expect from another professional. It's just professional behaviors. If someone is asking me for writing a piece and the deadline is X day, I need to give it that day because, that's part of being professional. So that's something to keep in mind too. That is not about the art, it's about professional behaviors that any person will have in a professional environment. And that is going to make a huge difference, especially if it's money involved. People really is going to value that.
Yeah, so you all be happy to know I put the chips up, but go ahead, Dr. Rodriguez. Thank you, Paula. Thank you. Go ahead, Dr. Rodriguez.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it takes a long time to shift public narratives. Like I remember even being through grad school, people are like, when are you gonna like kind of get done with being a student? As if it wasn't like teaching and researching and doing all of these things. Like it was a whole full-time job and more, really. So I don't know if I think anytime you're doing something that not everybody is doing, whether that's being an entrepreneur, like when you're not just working at like 9 to 5, I just don't think people have a frame of reference of what the day in and day out looks like to really understand it. And so then I think it falls even more on you to decide how you honor and value what you do. Like I know with being a mental health professional, we have big hearts. We want to show up and care for people. But I think then like everybody, wants to talk to you and have your time. And so protecting yourself, your energy, your space, and requiring whatever it is that you need from the people that are asking it of you, I think it teaches people how, in a sense, like to come at you and not come at you, in asking for your time, your energy, your creativity, and not because it's like you're better than this or better than that. It's just that there's only so much of you to go around, and you do have to make money. And so I think really figuring out how do I show up in a way that honors myself, my needs, my craft. And I think eventually people may not change how they interact with the whole industry, but hopefully they will change how they interact with you.
Yeah, that's really awesome. And I thank you all so much for your time. I want to just find out if there's any last minute thoughts or questions, or do you have questions for each other? Because we have about 15 minutes left, but we don't have to go the whole 15. I'm not like that. But if you have questions for each other before we kind of wrap up with your final thoughts.
I don't have a question. I just want to comment and say I feel like I got a free therapy session, and I love it. It's like, thank you all. I'll see you all later. Bye. Don't send an invoice. But no, I listen. I'm a creative, and this has been a great reminder about what's really important. You know what I'm saying? A lot of times we lose focus about what's important when it comes to what we do out here. The creative process, the impact on our communities, other people. And I just really want to thank you all for your awesome advice. It really helped me out a lot, and I'm gonna carry it with me and keep on working. So thank you.
Yes, definitely. I echo those things. Go ahead, Mishelle.
Oh, I was just curious for the creatives on the panel. Like, I think that to me, art is so needed, especially like I think about how we're about to go into the next election cycle, or we're in it, I guess. And there is so much pain everywhere. That I just am curious to hear from you guys where you go to fuel your creativity. Like how do you keep refueling it with all of the things happening?
Paula, you want to answer?
Yeah.
Oh, let me see. Make sure I didn't unmute her.
I do have an answer for that.
Yes, please.
It's not only how I feel, it's also how not depleted. So because what happened is, when you are in mental health professions, you see so much that it's very easy to get run down by that. So I do a lot of self-care in the sense that, cover all the basics, but also mentally, I'm very careful of what I consume, what I can consume mentally speaking. Like, don't see things that are gonna deplete me, my faith or my spirit or my peace, like horror movies or news that are too heavy or things that are gonna just put me in a depressive state. I try to be very carefully to choose what I feed my brain with. And that's one of the places where, even with music, like some of the music, amazing composers, but the music is so depressive that I really stay away from that. And they're amazing pieces, but at some point, when you are working so close to sound, the sound really affects you. And it's like taking care of that soil, like you said. So I just stay away from things that are really clear that are not good for my mental health. And I feed my brain like in the same way I want to feed my body, with healthy materials. And for increasing, I just do the same, keep my village, my happy people, my happy places, and also nourishing things that are maybe simple, like, cuddling in a blanket with a really good book or things like that, or going to places that I know that are going to be fun and safe and going to give me really good experience, like today, working with you ladies and guys.
Okay, Thiera, did you have any questions for anyone?
No, I think because that was my question too. It's like, with everything that's going on, how do you guys keep going? But you got the answer from that. So
look at that. They looking to us creatives to give them. Anyway, so yeah, closing thoughts. And we definitely, I've been recording it. Not the whole thing because I missed the first part, but I did get the majority of our conversation. And I'm also gonna, make available on Facebook all of the handouts that you all wanna, email to me. I'll probably post those things tomorrow. And also make sure you all are connected to one another. So wrapping up final thoughts, I think I will hand it off to Joel. Final thought?
Final thought. Like I said before, I'm grateful for this opportunity to share and to learn and to, stay mindful of these things. It's so important. And I just encourage anybody creative listening, to everybody on the panel, I just encourage us to keep pushing and find those pockets of joy, because right now the world is a lot going on. So we have to find those little pockets where we can just relax and those things that make us feel good. And so whatever that is for you, I just encourage everyone to, take advantage of those things. Definitely. I'm on the same path.
Okay. And then we'll do creative counselor. So popcorn, Dr. Lane.
So I think for me, this conversation was a great reminder of the power in collaboration and understanding, and getting a chance to bring kind of different schools of thought together and understand, to come together for one common goal. In addition to just being a reminder to take it one moment at a time. We get so wrapped up in wanting everything faster right now in this moment that we don't understand the things that we often will miss because we're so focused on things that are coming up or things that have happened in the past. So it was a great reminder to, no matter what it is, doing nothing is always doing something, even when we don't think it is, and to just take it easy and, really tune into ourselves.
Yeah, I feel like y'all been listening to me talk to myself or something. All this stuff, addressing all my issues. Anyway, so Paula, do you want to give us one last thought as a creative and as a counselor?
Well, basically, be loyal to yourself. At least as a musician, I always ask myself, do I really want to hear this piece twice when I write it? And if the answer is no, that means that is something that I'm being not loyal to myself. So I always trying to be, like asking myself a lot of heavy questions and being honest about it. And at some point, it's really fun to live like that because you don't have regrets.
Okay. And Dr. Rodriguez, you want to close this out with your final thoughts?
Yeah, I guess mainly I just want to say thank you to all of the creatives. I think art is such a big part of my own self-care and my own well-being. So there's like a nice little feedback loop, like you guys are healers. And I think I would just say that to normalize the rough patches, that it's like, it's always funny to me when somebody's experiencing a creative block, they're really hard on themselves as if it was like what is wrong with me, when like we all have them. And so I would just say wherever you are at or whatever the difficulty of the moment is, to remember that it's just part of being human, and to find from that space a way to like warmly coach yourself through it.
Wow, you all are so great. I just want to final thought, just say thank you, Dr. Rodriguez, for your friendship and your expertise. You always show up, and you always show up dope and ready. Dr. Lane, thank you. Congratulations ahead of time on your accomplishment and for being so enthusiastic and just awesome and willing and excited to jump in. I appreciate you. Mr. Joel Fluent Greene, you are always the inspiration, and I thank you so much for sharing your gift with the world. And Paula, I really appreciate everything that you offer, your insight, your perspective, and your honesty. All of you have been so honest and transparent, and I really appreciate y'all. And thank you so much. I feel like I'm on a podcast or something, but I'm not. But I really appreciate you all for joining in with the Highland Park Arts and Cultural Council. This has been one of our professional development offerings, our second workshop, which was a webinar on creative well-being, a panel on mental health for artists. I also want to thank Cameron Jenkins for creating the artwork that we were able to use for all of our advertisement. And that is it. I'm going to hang up and you all are free to go and stand up because we haven't stood up probably in like an hour and a half.
I've been pacing the whole time, actually.
Oh, you've been pacing. Good for you. You burned all of our calories because I didn't want to get them chips. So. All right, y'all. Thank you so much. I will work on trying to get this publicized for other people. But if you have any handouts or any thoughts that you want me to share with people, I'm gonna post all this stuff on Facebook and through email probably tomorrow. So get what you have to me as soon as you can. Thank you again. Have a great night.
Thank you all.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye.